And welcome back to the Daily 90, where we're still talking about education in honor of today. And Niger often lags behind in education quality and ranks low even among ASEAN nations. However, many steps have been taken to improve the quality of education here. To tell us more about that, we have Patria with us, an alumni of Indonesian Mengajar program. Good. Welcome to the Daily 90, Patria.
Thank you for having me.
And, you know, talking about this is the 2nd of May of Indonesian Education Day.
Yeah.
And
Happy Education Day.
Happy Education Day, and good to know. And, you know, where are we positioned now? How would you describe as education in Indonesia right now?
Well, we still have challenges, of course, as
Okay.
usual, but we also have to appreciate how far we have come so far.
Okay.
I just heard the news that in 2015 we have the PISA score.
Okay.
You know, like every year we usually highlight like we still need to do that, we still need to
Okay,
do
something
this.
need to improve.
Right,
Okay.
but one thing that we have to note is that in last year's PISA score, Indonesia was among the 4th most improved countries with a
Fourth,
score.
that's good.
4th, yeah. We're still, of course,
improving,
behind with
yeah.
some of the other countries, even to our Asian neighbors such as Thailand or the Philippines
Okay.
or Vietnam.
Okay.
But at least we are, you know, we're improving a lot. So that's a good thing.
Yeah. But what's making us having a lack of education? Is it because of the program or maybe the cultural? What is making us, even though we're improving, you know?
Yeah. So in terms of quality, I believe that teachers are like the single most important factor
Okay.
in improving that quality side, because
Okay.
like no matter how good the access is, as you know, like now the access to education is quite good for
Okay.
Indonesia, you know,
Right.
like because we have the obliged 9 years, and now we're moving into the 12 years minimum of education. But when you talk about the quality, then you have to talk about teachers.
But how can we improve the quality of these teachers? Do they need to go to extra maybe classes or other things? What do we need to improve teachers to be better?
Yeah. Actually, we're already kind of moving in the right direction for teachers' quality now. As you know, like in the past, we always, when we talk about teachers, we always discuss about the salary and all that.
Okay, right.
But now I think the issue has been ameliorated a little bit.
Okay.
Now we have like the teachers' allowance, special allowance for the special regions in Indonesia. But of course, you know, more trainings
Right.
and more, you know, opportunities to improve themselves and a lot of avenues that can actually be improved in that way. And the good thing is we don't always have to rely on the government. Like
True.
even like regular people
Okay.
or NGO or even private sectors can
Okay.
do a lot to improve teachers. So we don't have to always rely on the government.
But how are the government right now, you know, working together with the education in Indonesia? How is it right now?
It's actually pretty good, I
Okay.
guess. The government has been really opened up.
Okay.
As you know, there are a lot of initiatives taken by the private sectors or the NGOs.
Okay.
Maybe I as an alumni of the Indonesia Mengajar, was
Right.
one of the examples of how, you know, when you have the low quality of education in the rural area or in
Right.
the remote area and lack of access to education, you know, the private sectors don't just sit there, but they decided to recruit their own teachers and then send teachers to those who mostly needed teachers. So that's one
Okay.
example. Yeah.
And you mentioned also you used to work in an alumni Indonesia Mengajar
Yeah.
program.
Yeah.
And how was that experience? You know, giving education to the rural
Yeah.
areas or villages that, let's say, for example, there are some places that they don't even speak Bahasa Indonesia.
True, yeah,
right?
yeah.
How was that
So
experience?
I was teaching in East Kalimantan in the district or kabupaten of Pasir. So
Okay.
that's like way south in East Kalimantan, and they don't they understand Bahasa Indonesia, but they don't use it as a daily language. So
language.
that gives me a lot of challenges in
Yeah.
terms of teaching the kids. But the thing, again, coming back to how we improve the quality, like my experience taught us that the teachers actually makes a lot of difference. Like
Okay.
even your presence there actually like gives them a lot of new perspectives
New
and a lot
hope
of
also.
new hopes. Yeah, because you know, when the teachers are there and they're telling good things, because you know, in small regions like that or in small villages
Right.
like that, teachers are among the very few people of of the local communities who are actually educated.
Right.
So you don't actually impact your students, but also their parents and pretty much your community. So that's
good thing,
yeah, that's
basically.
a good thing. So when we talk about teachers, it's
Right.
not just their impact inside the classroom,
Right.
but when you
Also
talk
in
about their
everyday life.
parents,
Okay.
right? Because sometimes the local communities like ask me to do
Right.
things that were unimaginable for me.
Such as, for example?
For example, like when they need a report of, because there was some local program called community development, such as the
Okay.
PNPM.
Okay.
Probably people might have heard, like a government funding
Okay.
some infrastructure program to each of the villages. So a lot of the local people are, sorry to say, but they are not that literate.
Okay.
But in order to qualify for the program, they have to, have kind of like a proposal written down,
Okay.
typed up,
Right.
to be given to the central government in order to apply for
And
the
that takes
program.
time.
Takes time, and
Right.
they can't even type. They
Right,
don't have
right,
the
right.
laptops and everything. So I ended up helping them in doing that, and that's some extra work, of
Okay.
course. But again, that's in retrospect, when I think about that experience again, maybe that will give the local people more incentives, because
Okay.
they will think, oh, I want my kids one
have a better
day
education.
to have a better education, because
Right.
they will be typing, they'll be helping
Right.
all these programs, so they're pretty much mirroring their kids to their teachers. So that's
Okay.
how the teachers are, such an impactful aspect.
And based on experience also, were there any challenges or, for example, to educate or to communicate with the kids and the parents? Any funny stories that you could
Well,
share with
one
us?
thing is that because the village that I was living in was a fisherman villages.
Okay.
So there are hardly any other jobs or occupations that when you talk to your kids, what do you want to be in when you grow up?
Right.
Like
And most of them?
most of their answer would be either teachers or village's head,
Okay.
kepala desa,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
that's like the one that they see every
Right.
day, or fishermen, pretty much.
Because
Most of the people are fishermen. So it is not a bad thing to
Okay.
wanting to be one of
Right.
those things, but it's always good to have options, right?
True.
Like there are always options when you grow up. When you
Okay.
have an education, you have more options, so that's better for your life. So what I did was I invited like policemen and local doctors, nurses,
to see other options
to
out
come
there.
all the way
Yeah.
to the island, because the villages was like an one island kind of villages, so
Okay.
they're kind of like secluded in
Right.
a way. So we invited like some nurses, some
Okay.
doctors. We have kind of like our own career day.
Okay, yeah. that's
So we
nice.
have the doctors like
Dressing up as-
dressing
yeah.
up, and then they could try the rope that the
Yeah.
doctor was using,
Right, the
and
outfit.
using the stethoscope and
Right.
everything. So that's like a indirect kind of education,
Okay.
giving them more incentives, and then their parents were all like watching,
Right,
like
amazed,
what are
practically.
actually happening in schools, because it's like such an unusual day.
Right.
Usually the teachers are just like lecturing them what to do, but this time like they're doing themselves and
Right.
acting as if that would be their profession in the future.
Right,
So
right.
giving them an incentive of what good could come up from education is actually very, very important.
And talking about, for example, being teachers also, for example, are there a lot of people nowadays want to be a teacher and wants to educate other people that lives in the rural areas or in small villages nowadays?
Yeah, of course. The good news is that there are so many routes now available to teaching professions.
Okay.
So in the past, it used to be the case that if you want to be a teacher, wherever you are, you need to be PNS, you need to be
Okay.
a civil servant
Right.
Teacher.
Yeah.
But
Government
now,
official,
government
basically.
official.
Yeah.
Well, that is one way, of
Okay.
course. It's still there.
Okay.
But there are other routes as well. One is if you only want to be a teacher for a couple of years, you could join Indonesia Mengajar, for
Right.
example. They still open like 2 batches at least per year.
Okay.
And other thing is they have now, for example, in DKI Jakarta, they have like a contract teachers on a
Okay.
yearly basis. So
Right.
that's one option.
All right.
And if you want to go to, for example, private schools,
Okay.
of course, they also have their own routes to teachers. So there are actually a lot of options.
Okay.
And of course, if you can't just, if you can't be a teacher, say you're an anchor, you
Right.
already have a profession, but you want to be a teacher.
Right. You want to help also?
Yeah, organizations such as Indonesia Mengajar or
Okay.
University of Indonesia have their own ways to accommodate that. They
Okay.
have a one-day, sort of like a career day where
Okay.
you go for a leave
Okay.
from your day jobs
Right.
and go to a school,
And
a
help
science
them.
school, and then teach for a
Okay.
day. And then, yeah, it might be not a permanent kind of teaching
Right, right.
profession,
At
but
least
you
you're
know,
giving
at
effort
least you're giving effort.
community also.
Yeah, and usually after that one day, usually the alumni of such program would go back to the schools and
Okay.
contribute in one way or another, giving them like extracurricular events
Okay.
or sort like that.
Okay,
yeah.
right. Well, Patria, we're going to take a short break. We'll be talking about more about Indonesian education. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned in Daily 90. And welcome back to the Daily 90, still with Patria from the alumni of the Indonesian Mengajar program. Still talking about the education in Indonesia. When we compare it to among ASEAN nations, how do we see Indonesia right now?
Well, yeah, as I've mentioned, we're a little bit behind, I think.
But we're improving.
But we're improving. Of course, like you have to see, you can't just compare it like with other countries, for example, like
Right.
Singapore, right?
Right,
Like
right.
they've been like up there for quite some time.
True. And the population here in Indonesia is more.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe like the head of education minister in Singapore is probably similar to, for example, like Kepala Dinas in DKI
Right.
Jakarta. So
Yeah,
that in terms of the
That's
size.
true.
But yeah, we're improving and we're actually learning a lot from
Okay.
other countries as well in terms of. Improving the quality of education here, the strategies to, for example, improve the teacher performances.
Right.
There are actually a lot of international best practices that
Okay.
are being adjusted and implemented here. So that's kind of part of the explanations of the improvement of our quality of education.
So you're saying that, for example, let's say, education in America, or let's say in Europe, for example, can we implement those kind of things? Like, for example, I used to live in America also, and we studied sex education when we were like
Right.
6-year-old.
Right.
Here in Indonesia, it's different.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
can we implement those kind of subjects to Indonesian education nowadays,
Yeah.
to their curriculum?
Well, when we talk about learning from other countries, it doesn't mean that the curriculum, for example,
Suitable.
in entirety are implemented, copied, and pasted here. But there are principles
Okay.
that are implemented here.
Okay.
So, for example, when we try, not we as in
Okay.
I, but when the government in
government.
Indonesia tries to improve the teacher performance.
Okay.
So one way that they do now is using the what it's called the teaching professional allowance
Okay.
as a tool not only to improve the welfare of the teachers,
Okay.
but as an incentives to improve their quality of
The
teaching.
quality of teaching.
So this kind of principles are actually not, Indonesia was not the first countries to
Right.
implemented it. So we learned it from so many other countries,
Okay.
India
Right.
included, and I'm sure some of our OECD friends, OECD countries are
Right.
also included there. So that's, but the amount of the allowance or how the allowance are given or how they measure the performance of the teachers might differ here.
Okay.
But the principles are there. We're
Okay.
not only giving away allowance, so to
Okay.
speak, but we tied it with some sort of a performance measure. So that's actually been working so far.
And talking about, let's say, the quality of education in schools nowadays, in public schools, is it enough just by learning in school, or we have to have extra lessons outside the school?
Oh yeah, just in our experience, right? If we keep only learning at schools in the classroom, that would like bore us to death,
Right.
right? So now I think there are what it's called the character
Extracurricular?
education.
Okay.
Character education.
Yeah.
So part of the character education has the extracurricular component and the other non-classroom related
Okay.
activities. So the idea is to
Focus.
to give more options.
To give more options.
So not only that students learn about math or
Right.
all
Being
those hard
scientist.
stuff.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But to be involved in those activities as well after school. So I think now the government of Indonesia tries to have the if you remember, there was once the idea of having a full day education.
Yeah, how's that?
So the full day education was that it's actually not a full day of a classroom.
It's not a full day, right?
It's not a
Yeah,
full
yeah,
day
yeah,
as
yeah.
in you're learning in the classroom for a
Right.
full day, but you're being at school full day.
Like
so
an
you
extracurricular, some
right.
other things.
So some other
Okay.
things that are there. But again, the challenges to that is how to ensure that the quality of
True.
the extracurricular activities are equal among
Right.
regions. And in order to have that, again, we would have to have a good quality of teachers to do
That
that,
is
right?
true. That is
Because
true.
if the teachers are, lacking some competence
Right.
and lacking some qualifications
True.
to teach,
Yeah,
it ended up not really as fun as it
True. The kids
would
get
be
bored.
right. Yeah. So it's like a math class all
Right,
over
right,
again,
right.
right? So but I guess it's a good moving direction. I mean,
Okay.
from the government.
Well, talking about also, let's say, teaching kids extracurricular or outside that, and let's say, for example, our DJ Eyal, for example. Eyal, would you want to be one of those teachers that, to improve, Indonesia's, let's
class.
say, art class or musicians? Would you do that? Would you be a private teacher?
Sure, as a musician especially.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm very curious about your strategy to improve the art itself within the students. And I have actually one of the most important question for you is actually the role of the parents. Because as we see in Jakarta, there's lots of parents who are actually very busy enough
Yeah.
to keep their kids. I mean, are there any tips for you, for the parents at home?
Well, first of all, I'm not a parent yet, so who am I to give people advice? But yeah, I mean, it's one. If I could refer back to my experience as during in Indonesia mengajar,
Yeah.
parents actually play a very, very crucial role.
Okay.
Because teachers. If you look at the hours, how many hours in a day,
Right.
teachers only with your kids for
Right.
about 4, 6, 8 hours tops,
True.
right? And they're 24 hours a day, so most of the times kids are actually with their parents. So no matter how hard you try
Right.
to shape the characters, the knowledge, and everything with the kids at school, it will all erased when the parents at home teaching a completely different things.
Yeah.
So yeah, one of the ways of doing that is actually by having as close as possible of a relationship between the schools and the parents.
Okay.
For example, now I think in Jakarta we might take it for granted for teacher-parents events.
Yeah.
Like when a report. What do you call it? Like a report
Report card.
distribution day,
Okay.
report card distribution
Yeah.
day. The parents
Parents
would come to
come,
school, right?
right.
And then we
And
just take it for granted.
Right, right.
But that's not the case
Right.
in so many rural regions in Indonesia, because parents think my kids are at school, so
Right.
that should be my.
It's not my job.
Yeah, it's not my job.
Yeah,
it's
it's
my
theirs.
teachers.
Yeah.
And the report, yeah, it's there, but I don't really get the report anyway, so I
Right,
don't
right.
really see a point of being involved in my kids' performance. So again, in here, the schools, the leadership of the principals,
Yeah.
the teachers actually have to be really involved, the parents, in
Yeah.
whatever things they're trying to do at school. So that's
And I think
actually
I
one
agree
thing
with
we
that.
have
Like,
to
for
do.
example, there are some cases, my friend,
Yeah.
they have kids, right? They have kids, and let's say the teacher couldn't come, right?
Yeah.
And then these kids have homeworks,
Yeah.
and usually the mom basically helps the kids, right?
Right.
The mom goes out of town with the family, the father's at home.
Yeah.
So during this part of time when the mom is not there,
Yeah.
these kids have homeworks, but
Right.
because the father doesn't know how to educate or teach them,
Yeah.
so he doesn't do the homework right. So the
Yeah.
mom goes hey, where have you been? So like what you mentioned before, that means that the role of the father and the mother or the parents is needed,
They're
right?
very, very important. They're very, very
Okay,
important.
okay.
And actually, and another thing that we witness now, the Ministry of Education, for example, for the first time in its long history,
Yep.
now they have a special directorate
Okay.
for parent education.
Just focusing on the parents.
Just focusing on the parents.
Is it
So-
really that bad?
Well, when
Parents nowadays, I know you're not a parent yet, but I'm talking about when they create a new division or
right. Yeah. Well, at least that's a sign that they realize that
Now that they realize,
they realize that the role of parents can be overlooked as it had
And it's
been for
needed.
quite some time. Yeah. So they created that special directorate. So they had like a lot of programs for how for schools to
Okay.
to involve the parents better.
Okay.
And how parents could actually be involved at schools, because in many regions, like we're not only just talking in Jakarta,
Right.
Parents are still view schools as a very very far away
Okay.
from them. So
Right.
that's actually a good way. Yeah.
Okay. Well, one last question. How can the government improve Indonesia's education, let's say, to implement or to socialize to the parents also, since you mentioned about that?
I would say, well, there are a lot of ways, but I would highlight one thing is
Okay.
that don't just rely on
School?
government's programs.
Okay. All right.
Because there are so many programs provided by private sectors,
All right.
NGOs, that could actually have a lot of opportunities
Okay.
to solve the issues.
Yep.
So for example, like there are these organizations called Ruang Guru,
Okay.
which use the information technology system to help people
kids.
monitor
Okay.
the students' performance. So that's
right.
one good way, right? Like there's a lot of innovations out there.
Okay.
So I think the government should keep their options open with
All
this
right.
kind of innovations.
And also, parents needs to be involved with kids'
Oh, yeah,
education.
that's a must, yeah,
All right.
that's
Thank you very much, Mas Satria.
Sure. Thank
and
you for
hopefully
having me.
our education in Indonesia will get better in the
Yeah,
future also.
hopefully, yeah. Amen.
All right. Thank